Okay, thank you all for joining Paradise Permaculture Institute, our seed saving event here in January. So first we're beginning with the board members' talks on seed saving. And Adele can take it away. We temporarily have these loaded on our website. Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us. Paradise Permaculture Institute is happy to present some seed saving information. I'm the president and it's a delight. We love what we do. We have a fantastic board they'll be speaking to. Basically what I'd like to talk about it's kind of from a permaculture point of view, and is seeds that fall from plants just naturally. The more that we can do where nature takes over on its own, the easier for us. So in my garden, the plants like this that just automatically reseed are kale. Kale I plant in several different areas and comes up every year. Parsley. Parsley in the front of our house where it's warm by the brick is very prolific, even growing in the seed. The seeds are sprouting in the cracks and growing really, really well there. Then also radishes. Radish are quick to go to seed, as everybody knows. It gets to be a little frustrating, but enjoy those plants. Let a couple of them go to seed and drop seed, and you can spread those where you want, or just let it go right where it is. I'm really enjoying mustards, and I've been planting them in our rolling high tunnel greenhouse along with green beds outside, just natural. And they're have a very unique taste and a lot of nutrients. So they're fun to add, really fun to add to salads. Arugula rocket is another one. That's the cultivar that I use in the high tunnel and plant outside of the high tunnel in the regular garden. And calendula is a really fun one. Calendula has the moon shape, kind of the half a moon shaped seed with the little spikes down its back. And calendula is a great plant to have for medicinal purposes, but also it's so easy, very little care. You just barely have to water it. If you water it too much, you'll lose it. Marigold is great. Marigold will reseed very easily, and I like to spread these seeds at the entrance and exit to our greenhouse, so the beneficial insects won't be bothered, but the insects that you usually don't want can be deterred by marigolds. And I plant them in my inside gardens and outside gardens and just spread them. Like I said, maybe if you have an area where it's windy, the wind's coming towards your garden in a particular direction, that would bring in a lot of insects. So plant the marigolds there and it'll be a great deterrent around those beds. Chives will come back, but they'll also reseed themselves. Chives are really fun, those big, beautiful purple blossoms with lots of seeds. And I like to collect seeds. It's so easy from that. You just tip the plant over with an envelope underneath and your envelope will fill up fast. Sunflowers are very prolific. I love sunflowers because of course you can eat the seeds. And wait until the little fuzzy part in the center, either brown or yellow, falls off from the seed, and then the back of the sunflower head starts to turn yellow and they're ready to harvest pretty soon after that. So you can cut the head off the top. We hang them from the ceiling in our garage so the mice don't get them. And the Native Americans actually put them face down on their wooden roofs, some of the Plains Indians on their wooden roof, and then the backs would turn more yellow and dry out, and then they could put them, after they dry out and loosen the seeds a little, they could put them face down on a tarp or blanket and hit the back with a stick. I'm going to try that this year. I think it's easier than picking them out myself. And people have also had good luck with tomatoes, pumpkins, coriander, fennel, and nasturtiums for reseeding themselves. I would like to mention also mosh. It goes to seed very easily. It's a green, kind of like a spinach in a way. I think it has more of a nuttier taste, but the mosh is, we grow it in our rolling high tunnel greenhouse off and on throughout the winter. And the mosh seeds you can spread with your other greens and other areas in your garden, and they will come up when the weather cools. And I think they would probably go to seed early in the summer. So we've enjoyed it, like I said, in the greenhouse and out. And thank you very much for joining us.
Hi,
Okay.
my name is Megan, and I wanted to share with you some of the reasons that I like to save seeds. First, I want to start out with a shout out to plants. I think they're incredible. They offer us food, which contain nutrients and vitamins. They can offer us shade. They can offer us beauty and color. For gosh sakes, they give us oxygen. So they're really quite amazing. I personally love to watch plants grow from seed to veggie, from seed to fruit, from seed to seed. I enjoy watching the whole process and life cycle of a plant. This past couple years, I've really found and learned to appreciate the end of their life cycle. And this is when I usually will harvest my seeds. And I love to do it for a few reasons. I like to harvest my own seeds because, one, I can really connect with the plants. I really like to get, up in those plants and like really see where the seeds are coming from, really see the whole anatomy of the plant. I find it really beautiful. I also like to save seeds because it does save me a little extra money when it comes to buying seeds. I don't have to buy quite as many because I have taken the time to save and store my seeds for the spring. Another reason I love to save seeds is because I know that these plants do well in my garden and in the way that I can garden. I know that they can thrive. And this past year, I especially focused on my flowering plants. The reason I did that was honestly, I want to be able to have a fuller and more beautiful garden for next year. I want to encourage a really healthy ecosystem within my own little garden for insects and for birds and for any little microbials that end up decomposing my plants that fall, to the earth. So this past year I did a lot of seed saving for, I hear, our marigold seeds, calendula, I have yarrow, lots and lots of sunflower seeds. Um, so I'm anticipating a really full and beautiful garden come spring and summer and into autumn for next year to encourage a good and happy habitat for the critters that we share this earth with. So those are some of the reasons that I enjoy seed saving.
Hi, I'm Adele Field, Paradise Permaculture Institute board member and digital marketing coordinator. Permaculture has literally been life-changing for me, giving me a way to look at the natural world and the built environment by following the patterns of nature to embrace plant diversity and create sustainable, abundant, healthy food and soil systems. I'm from Melstone, a small rural town in eastern Montana where I manage a community garden and own a home on a parcel of city lots that have seen decades of neglect. My vision is to restore part of the land as a pollinator habitat with wildflowers and trees, and to continue improving my food garden areas. The soil is alkaline and clay, from hard pan to impassable gumbo, depending on the weather. Water is scarce and poor. The growing season window is short and unpredictable. My best growing successes have been squash, sunflowers, cherry tomatoes, comfrey, and in my small greenhouse, carrots, kale, and arugula. My grandmother's rhubarb, lilacs, black currants, and just two, tulips come back reliably each year without my intervention. I save my winter squash seeds, and they do well from year to year. After removing the flesh, I dry the seeds on paper towels or in a bamboo steamer with a screen I added to the bottom. When they're thoroughly dry, I put them in a glass or plastic container or an envelope or a Ziploc bag until I'm ready to plant in seed blocks or direct sow outside. My other strong success has been cherry tomatoes. Apparently, the right way to save tomato seeds, thanks YouTube, is to ferment them. Scoop them into a jar, add water, wait a few days, skim off the layer of mold, wash, strain, dry, and store. Previously, I just let the seeds and their gelatinous sprout inhibitor covering dry out on paper towels, then kind of rub them together to remove most of the dried goop. I had pretty decent germination rates, but I will give the fermentation stage a try. The two most important lessons I've learned are: 1, label seeds with variety, year, and source. To wait is to forget, at least for me. And 2, be sure the seeds are completely, absolutely, totally, really, really dry before storing. Otherwise, they may spoil. I also save flower seeds from the community garden at the end of the season: calendula, flax, marigold, sunflower, and hollyhocks. The hollyhock seeds take hours to separate, so I generally cut the stalks and devote an afternoon to them at home. Some of my plants are great at self-seeding, so I let them: carrots, lettuce, borage, dill, purslane, yarrow, and more hollyhocks. At home, I love seeing beneficial wild plants arrive voluntarily each spring: dandelions, salsify, lamb's quarter, mustards, mullein, plantain, wild roses. One of my most exciting finds last summer was some Asclepsia cyrenaica, common milkweed, the preferred food of the monarch butterfly. When the seed pods were just starting to burst, I harvested 50% of them and left the rest on the plants. I'll start some indoors and also try planting some directly in the ground to see if I can increase their numbers. For me, a gardening experiment is a worthwhile experience as a learning opportunity, no matter what the outcome. I just recently collected some pine cones after a fierce windstorm, and I've got some organic gala apple seeds in my fridge in a baggie of moist potting soil. And yes, I know they won't be true to the originals. I successfully germinated some in the past, but they died in the transplant stage when I had to leave for traveling. Do your research, talk and share with other gardeners, and above all, don't be afraid to take chances. It's the best way to learn.
Hello, honorable seed savers. Michelle Evans here. Since I don't know how to turn the camera around, I can't show you my face if I show you my garden. But I thought I'd show you one of my gardens. Today's Monday, January 25th, 2021. And when I talk about saving seeds, I have to preface it. I have a hierarchy when thinking about seeds. First comes God, Spirit, the universe, whatever you want to call it, my connection to the earth and my respect for it. Next comes soil. Everything I plant goes to build the soil first, then into my tummy. The next consideration is compost. 60% of what I grow goes into the compost pile to feed the soil. Then, considering all these aspects, I attempt to grow all the seed needed for the plants to honor the earth, feed the soil, and fill the compost bin in the tummies of my husband and I. Seed saving is absolutely essential to our survival. At 7,300 feet, many plant varieties do not do well here. If I can get something to stay alive all the way through to seed production, I know I can rely on that variety to do better and better each year. Instead of purchasing seeds each year, the process of cultivating seeds from my own land allows the variety to adapt to my harsh conditions and the flavor of my soil. Each year they do better and better. I learned in my Master Gardener class that if you grow your own variety of something, like garlic, after 5 years of your own reproduction, you can rename it, like Michelle's Special Edition Cold Weather Garlic or something like that. Seed production has become politicized, like almost everything else these days. Allowing multinational corporations to control what seeds are available is a really bad idea. We have lost literally millions of plant varieties. I lost one of my own, a red bell pepper, open pollinated, named Gypsy. I forgot to save seed each year, and one year a late killing frost did them in. I have searched, and there are similar peppers, but none exactly like that. Saving seeds can be a wonderful adventure, especially for children or grandchildren. It doesn't have to take up much time and can actually provide additional income to your household if that's what you like. A little goes a long way. Try just one thing, your favorite plant, like kale, super easy. Try it. You'll like it. You'll love it. Thank you. I can't show you.
Hi, I'm Angela C. Graves, and I'm on the board of directors for Paradise Permaculture. So we're so excited that you're here for our seed extravaganza, and I want to talk a little bit about my experience with seed saving. So I recently got into seed saving just in the past year, and I didn't do much with my vegetables because my garden got planted really late, but I did save some flower seeds for one of my favorite plants, which is calendula. And so here, I have some dried calendula here. You can see it very well. And so these are the calendula petals, not the seeds, but they do turn into seeds if you let them stay on the plant long enough. And then the seed heads, though, are really beautiful. And so here's the seed head. So I use calendula in my herbal business to make salves and lotions and a variety of skin healing products. I also make tinctures with the flower petals, which are great for the skin. And then the seeds, well, this beautiful plant really produces a lot of seeds, as you saw from that seed head that I showed. So every petal produces another seed. And so that means every flower head has 12 to 15 seeds on it. So if you let it go, then of course the seeds will fall on the ground and it will reseed itself in the following spring. So you'll always have an abundance of calendula. I have found that there are many flowers that the seeds can be harvested in a similar manner. by letting the flower head go to seed and then plucking off those seeds so you have it for next year. And then, of course, the vegetables, well, for me, tomato has been one of the easiest to save seeds because I can just open up the tomato and squish the seeds out and then put them in my pots to germinate in the early spring. So that's been my experience. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody reaches out, and we're just so glad that you're here and have an interest in this fantastic journey of saving seeds and planting them and helping other gardeners flourish and all these gardens come to fruition. So have a fantastic week. Thanks. Hi, I'm Annie Graves, and I'm on the board of directors for Paradise Permaculture.
Okay. Okay, thank you, board members. I have to just share a really quick story. Seed saving is really exciting, and here's an exciting thing that happened to me. I was saving seeds of blue lupin, and I was up in the mountains, and the flowers were drying and the seeds were forming, and I thought, I'm going to stick these in a cup. So I had a paper cup and I stuck it next to my door, well, the little cup holder in my door. And then a couple days later, I had forgotten about them, and I heard a bang, like a shot. And I was wondering where it came from. So I pulled over, and the blue lupin seeds were popping out and hitting the cup and vibrating. So seed saving can be very exciting. But anyway, thank you again for coming. And I'm so glad you're here to hear Robin and to hear the board members. And Robin, I would love it if you gave an introduction of some of your experience, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us. So welcome, Robin.
Thank you, Mona, and thank you everybody at Paradise Permaculture. I will give myself a little introduction here in a second. I am the owner of the Good Seed Company, but I do want to start out by saying I think those videos were just beautiful. They were, frankly, I think you captured the essence of seed saving and the gift of it and the ease of it and the play of it and the value of it. And there's a part of me that's like, we're good to go. Go plant, go play. You don't need to hear from me. That being said, I can provide some filling in the gaps here, but what I want to just take a second to acknowledge is what I heard from each of you. And what I heard from Mona was, as she said, plants just naturally grace us with their gift of their progeny, which is their seeds. And you actually don't even have to quote unquote save them. You could just let the plants reseed. A vast majority of plants that we don't think of really will just give up the gift of their seeds for the next generations simply by letting that plant go to seed. And carrots are a great example of that. There is a very specific way to, gather our forces and save the carrot seed, which is, and I'll share a little bit about that, but honestly, even in Montana, you can just let that plant let go to seed, and some portion of those seeds will make it through our winters with our temperature variations and all sorts of things. It's not 100%, but it's enough for a home garden for sure to let a plant self-seed. Nasturtiums are another example. That's a plant that is originated in the tropics, and one would think that nasturtium plants wouldn't make it through a winter here, but a lot of their seed just make it through the winter, and you'll have volunteers showing up next spring in your garden. So this speaks to the resiliency of plants. They've been around on the planet for hundreds of millions of years. They know how to survive. They know how to make seed. They know how to reproduce. They got us covered, which is why they are the source of our food. And from Megan, my takeaway was just the value and the appreciation of the gift of watching plants grow. And I personally think that, we have been saving seeds, and I'll share this when I finally get into my talk, but we've been saving seeds. Human beings have been saving our own seeds since we've been, quote unquote, doing agriculture, which is somewhere between 10 and 16,000 years. So seed saving, seed selecting, seed sharing, it's in our DNA. And if we just give ourselves the opportunity and the gift of slowing down and connecting with our plants, watching them grow, paying attention to when they go to seed, choosing to gather the seed or just let it fall, that whole process, particularly the more tactile relationship we have with our plants, the more it awakens within us the knowledge in our own DNA on how to save seed for our own food production. So it literally is in your DNA how to save seed. It is not difficult. It does not require a PhD. There are tricks of the trade. It's easy to figure it out. So that's a takeaway that I was reminded by listening to Megan's talk. And from Adele, I thought of, she shared at the beginning about how hard, how special her soil is, and the gift it's given her of figuring out what grows well in her soil. And at the same time, if you think about it, nature abhors bare ground. What nature does is cover it with something. So remembering that no matter what your soil is, something will grow there, guaranteed. And it's just an exploration to figure out what will. And I love listening to Adele share how she did it. And she really did a great job of, made my job a whole lot easier today about how to save the seed. Super easy, great description. I loved it. And her key point about labeling your seed, that is absolutely critical. You got to label all the way through. Do not rely on your memory for anything. And if you don't label it, it'll just be a mystery from here on out. And that's just the way it'll be, but it'll still make you good seed to save. And I love this description from Michelle about plants are here. Plants have their own role. They're here for not only for their own propagation and their own survival of their own species, but they are very clear that they are part of nature. And so their lifespan not only involves producing seed, but they have a relationship through their soil, through their roots, to feed the microbes in the soil, and that helps build the soil, which builds their future. So the conversation that Michelle introduced us to about growing plants, we are also part of nature. We're also part of the cycle. And so we have a role to play in our relationship with the plants that we rely on, both for our food and for our seed, is acknowledging that it's all part of developing and improving our future. So we have to pay attention to how we grow the plants. It's not complicated. Just pay attention that the plant has a role in providing food to the microbes in the soil, which will help in turn provide nutrients back to the plant, which will in turn provide nutrients to us when we eat the plant. And acknowledging that it's all a role, it's all a part of a system, it's all part of our future as part of the whole of the ecosystem that is the planet, and being thoughtful about how many plants we grow, how much we take from the plant, how much seed we take from the plant, just understanding that it's a relationship and not an extractive experience, and that we are, or to believe and release the belief any one of us may have that we are separate from nature. And then the last one, the discussion from Angela about the beauty of the seeds. There are so many magical ways developed by nature in how plants design their capacity to reproduce themselves means it really is simply it. To me, it just reduces the effort on my part to try to figure things out. Truly, honestly, and completely, nature has this figured out. It's simply for us to play our role in taking responsibility and accountability for the source of our food and our food supply for our children, our grandchildren, our future generations by being respectful and helping to rebuild our seed supply. And every single one of us can do that with saving our own small quantity of seeds. It doesn't take much, sharing it with our neighbors, and helping to build a repository in the communities where we live so that we have a reliable source of seeds that do well in the soils and the climates where we live. It's how our ancestors got us to where we are today, and it's how we'll support ourselves and our future generations for the decades and centuries to come. So, having said all that, I'm happy to go into a little more detail, but honestly and truly, I think you guys did just a beautiful, beautiful job. And I thank you for the work that the Paradise Permaculture does in inviting people to save seeds. Okay, I'm going to go now and zip on through my little discussion. Shall I do that, Mona?
Yes, 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 we would love that. Thank
Here
you.
we go. Here comes I'm going to share my screen. Oh, I have to do this. Here we go. Oh, all right. So here's my screen. Mona, if you could just somebody give me a thumbs up that you hear it and see it okay, because I can't see.
Yep, we hear
Okay,
it.
awesome.
I hear it.
All right, so I'm going to zip on through. This compilation of this talk is endeavors to collect the questions that I've gathered over the years of sharing about seed saving and from my knowledge of seed saving. So just going to jump into a little bit about why, and then choosing plants to save seed from and when, a little bit about harvesting and processing, the wet and dry seed methods, just kind of builds on what Adele mentioned. Some questions, some information about germ testing and seed viability, and then how to plan your garden with seed saving in mind. So I am the owner of a company called the Good Seed Company. We sell heirloom seeds for common use. This is a passion project of mine that I put together simply to try to reestablish the community practice of selecting, saving, and sharing seeds for common use. And I think it'll become clear why I think it's important as we jump through these slides. So I won't say more about it than that, other than to say I've been doing this for about 7 or 8 years now. And I think it's time to take the seed company to its next level. So I'm going to be sending out information to folks who want to participate in the next generation of the seed company, which is taking it beyond beyond where I've gotten it. It's time for more people and more ideas. I'm also the interim director of a statewide sustainability organization called ARROW, and I think it's an important organization for people to be aware of. Since 1974, it's been promoting a more sustainable Montana through sustainable ag practices and renewable energy. And in the last decade, it has focused significantly on helping to establish resilient community food systems, and local seed supplies are central to that. And so lots of information available on the website, lots of opportunities to engage and participate and find ways to support your community in building greater resiliency and greater food access for all in your community. And related to that, we recently launched an updated Abundant Montana directory, and it's really dedicated to connecting all the dots of the food system and making it easier for anyone to find and choose local, whether it be food or food access. So there's lots of information there. We invite you to participate and learn more. So why save seeds? Okay, what's at stake? Michelle talked about this in her talk. Basically, in the last 100 years, we have lost over 95% of our agricultural crop diversity. And I'll share a little bit about why in another slide coming up here, but just know that. So that's just a fact, period. And why is that an issue? Well, let's start first with the fact that our food starts with our seeds. You know, we're humans. We haven't figured out how to survive, let alone thrive without food. And all food starts from plants, and all plants start from seeds. Even if you're a hunter, the animal that you hunt relies directly or indirectly on plants for its growth and survival. So at the core, it's plants, and plants are grown from seeds. And the plant diversity comes from seeds. And as I mentioned earlier, over in 16,000 years, humans have created all of our common crop diversity. We are responsible for the hundreds of thousands of varieties that that are present on the planet today. You know, there's over 40,000 varieties of rice. There's tens of thousands of varieties of corn and wheat and other staple grains that we rely on, let alone the carrots, the potatoes, the apples, etc., on and on and on. So we created this diversity, and we did it through a history of selecting varieties that did well, saving the seed from them, and then sharing that seed. This is a picture of what wild carrot looked like, pretty different from the carrots we eat today. Wild corn and wild wheat. So, and the point about all of this is we know how to do this. So even though we've lost a lot of our variety of crops, we can get it back. It's just a question of selecting, saving, and sharing seeds. That's it. And we know how to do that for sure. So what's at stake? So the other piece of this, you know, I say that in terms of selecting, saving, and sharing seeds, every single one of those three things are important. And the most important of those three that are equally important, in my opinion, is the sharing of the seeds, because it's the best hedge against disruptive change. It mixes up the DNA a little, and so it's the best way to make sure that somebody's going to survive when there's a disruptive change. So if everybody's growing carrots, let's say, and let's say we're all growing one variety of carrot, but we're all growing it in our own local environment, and we're all growing it from our own different soil conditions, there's going to be some change of, we're all going to have slightly different genes expressed in the different plants, and maybe a new pest comes to town and destroys, or there was one of you mentioned an early frost. I think it was Adele, I could be wrong, but one of you mentioned that you had an early frost and you lost a lot of your plants, but some of them survived. So those had something going on that did a little better, and so that's a genetic trait that, God, it's good to have that. And if you can share that seed now with someone who's growing plants somewhere else, it just helps maintain that diversity, and that builds stability. In order to do that, you have to have stable genetics, and that's called open pollinated or heirloom seeds. It's different from what's called hybrid seed. So if you want to be saving seeds, and all the varieties and all the plants that people talked about in those videos at the start of today's program, those are all heirloom or open pollinated seed. All your wildflowers, all your wild plants clearly are open pollinated. Okay, so let's just take a minute, bear with me, but it's important that we understand this. How did we get to this point where we have now lost 95% of our seed varieties? Like how could that happen? Well, it's happened because once upon a time, we all took responsibility for our food. You know, there was no grocery store. Certainly was no Amazon or whatever. If you wanted to eat and reproduce and have children, you needed to take ownership of where your food came from. You either grew it, you knew someone who grew it, and the person who grew it saved their seed. There was not a seed company. But over the last couple hundred years, we've had businesses take over the seed production, and that's become very, very prevalent, particularly since about the 1900s. And so at the home and the community level, we stop saving seed. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just what is. And at the commercial level, we have a vastly reduced access to heirloom and open pollinated varieties. That's because there's a bunch of different reasons. Some of it is that seed companies have put a lot more effort into providing new varieties every year, and these are the hybrid varieties. These are brand new varieties, and the genetics is not yet settled. And so they're not really, they're just not helpful for seed saving. They don't grow true to type. And then a lot of plants, particularly the hybrids, have a lot of restrictions at a commercial level for seed saving. They may have become patented, in which case you are legally not allowed to save the seed from it, or because they have a patent on it, which is a limited monopoly, or they may have a tag license that just simply says, by opening this bag, you agree not to save the seed, and we can do that because we're the source of the seed that you're buying. So we're just limited that way. Genetically modified seed is not available for seed saving. It also, the genetics are really quite messed up, and often they have a lot of legal restrictions on them. And then the other key piece of this is that, as I said, this happens at the commercial level. And at the commercial level, there is a significant consolidation of seed companies. So I'm going to show you a slide. Don't freak out, but it's important to understand this. So hang in there for what's coming. This is a picture of our seed industry. So this is over 60% of the global proprietary seed supply is owned by a total of 3 multinational organizations, or companies, excuse me. Now, there's a couple things to know about this slide, this picture. One is that the size of the circle indicates their market share. So Bayer is the largest one. The next biggest one is Corteva. And the third biggest one is ChemChina. Let me go back and tell you something else, which is this is the consolidation as of 2019. In 2016, there were 6 big companies, but there have been 3 major mergers in the last 3 years. And so Bayer bought out Monsanto, which is this little red thing you can't hardly see anymore. The name Monsanto is going to disappear shortly. Corteva is a merger of DuPont and Dow, and ChemChina merged with a company called Syngenta, which, if you're in the seed business, you've heard of. If you haven't, you might not have, but it's a significant company source of hybrid and GMO seed production. The last thing I'm going to tell you here is to pay attention to the colors. So red or maroon represents chemical companies, blue represents seed companies, and green represents other. Mostly those are biotechnology companies, excuse me. So the point is that our major seed production comes from 3 conglomerates that are driven by chemical companies. These are the companies that produce our herbicides, our chemical fertilizers, all that stuff. They have purchased seed companies because there is a relationship between, you know, the herbicide and chemical fertilizer combinations and the seeds that do well with that combination. So you know, I am not demonizing anybody. This is just what is. This is what we are dealing with in terms of our commercial seed supply. The vast majority of seed companies are purchased and owned by a conglomerate such as these. And my point here simply is, these folks are not thinking about open pollinated and heirloom seeds. It is just not on their mindset at all. They're looking for a common denominator. So if you're dealing with common denominators, you want a couple varieties that do well everywhere. You know, that's what we're dealing with. And because these companies invite and direct their agricultural farming partners to use their products, the soil is really just a medium. They're really in commercial, industrial, chemical agriculture. You really want to reduce the variability that a natural environment would generate in terms of the variety of the microbes in the soils and the organisms. If you can just get rid of all of that and just have a soil medium, and then you provide the inputs through the chemicals that you add and the herbicides, and you dial all that in, and then you have a seed that does well in that relationship, that's easier for you in terms of figuring out what your inputs and your bottom line is, and providing a guaranteed dollar value to your shareholders. That's their mindset, that's their focus. You and I are thinking about the relationship between the soil and the microbes in the soil and the nutrition in the soil, and getting that into the plants that have a relationship and a memory and a knowledge of how to work with the soil and provide nutrients for the health of the plant, and then for the animals and humans that are eating the plants or the seeds that are being produced thereby. It's an entirely different mindset. So this is not a resource for us. Okay, so a little more on why we need to be saving our seeds and ramping up this ability that we each have to save seed, and inviting our neighbors to do it and our communities to do it, and building our own local seed supplies. Resiliency is a key component here. Resiliency is the capacity and the ability to respond to or accommodate disruptive change. And disruptive change means it has low predictability and it has a high impact. Often we think of that as something that's negative. So, a tsunami or a tornado, but it's also something positive. Winning the lottery is a disruptive change. You can't predict it, and it is going to change your life in ways you didn't anticipate. Also, having your first child. You may think you know what's coming after 9 months of preparing, but when that baby shows up in your lap, your world has changed forever. So disruptive change is okay, but being resilient is your ability to adapt and respond. Again, one last thing to say about this. We have in our knowledge base so many resources in resiliency. Our flowering plants have been around for 125 million years. They know how to handle disruption. The microbes in the soil have been around for anywhere from 500 million to 1 billion years. They know how to handle disruption. They have a direct relationship with the plants. Like, they have this covered. Our job is to get out of the way, let them do their job, and be respectful and participate with it, and support their knowledge base in the plants that we select and save seeds from. So, and diversity is the capacity to be adaptable. So again, increasing the diversity of varieties is the best hedge against any disruption that may come down the road. And the one thing we all know is that disruption is going to come, period. We need look back no further than 2020 to experience disruption. The pandemic has demonstrated that you cannot predict the future in terms of disruptive events, and our ability to be resilient through it is dependent on our capacity to have diverse means for living through it. Some of us did really well with COVID. We were able to respond physically in the face of the virus, and others didn't. So that genetic that we have built into our system is central for our capacity to continue as a species. It's the same with our plants. All right, last thing, it's important everybody know about this. This is a great resource, and it has its limitations. So just so you know, this lovely and human being named Carrie Fowler over the last 20 years has dedicated his life to building the Svalbard Global Seed Bank, or Seed Vault, that is on an island in the archipelago off Norway. And it is dedicated to housing, being a repository that is intended to withstand any kind of disruption to the planet. and to save our, be a global seed repository. It only has open pollinated seeds because they wanted to make sure that they would be reproducible. Seeds are saved in a vault under cold storage conditions to maintain their viability for as long as possible. And the invitation was sent out to every country on the planet to provide their seeds from their local seed banks and provide some quantity of those that would be stored here at this vault and would be made available in the event any country needed them at any time. And this is fabulous and wonderful. And it doesn't really help us in our communities in Montana. Really, you know, if there is a catastrophic event that happens such that the seeds in this vault are necessary, you know, Montana is not at the top of anybody's list. We got to make sure we got seeds to get to the folks in Livingston and in Ekalaka. You know, this is fabulous, and it's an invitation for us to build our own local seed supplies right where we live, and it's not hard or complicated or difficult to do, really. So there we go. Enough of all that. Let's get on to some fun stuff. If I can figure out how to move to the next slide. I seem to be, there we go. So, all right, here are the questions that come up in terms of how do I choose plants to save seed from and when? And we're going to talk also about harvesting, the wet and dry seed method. This is really what Adele was talking about. So, here's something to think about when you're saving seeds, like when are the seeds ripe for harvesting? So the way to think about this that I think is helpful for most people is think about your seeds as, think about your plants as providing what we call the fruit seeds or the green and root seeds. And the fruit seeds are plants for where we eat the fruit or we eat the seeds that are in the fruit, as distinguished from the plants where we eat the greens or we eat the roots. And for our purposes, we're going to talk about flowers and herbs in the greens and roots seeds. So, fruit seeds. So these are your peppers, your tomatoes, your eggplant, peas, corns, beans, melon, squash, right? All of these we're actually eating the fruit. We're eating the tomato, we're eating the corn. And that's different from, say, a lettuce plant, right? We're just eating the greens. So the point about this is that when if you have a plant for your fruit plants, you want to save the seed. The seed is viable at the end of the plant's life. So in terms of the plant's mind, it's when the fruit is ripe. That means that the seeds are mature. The tricky part is that we like to eat things when they're sweet. And when the plant is making seed for its next generation, it puts a lot of sugar into the seed or into the flesh around the seed that will ultimately end up in the seed, because sugar is a source of energy, but then it converts it into a long storage form of that sugar, which is a starch. For our eating purposes, a lot of the fruit that we eat, we like it when it's sweet. And for a lot of the fruit seed, the seed is not yet viable. It's not yet mature. So there are a couple plants where the seed is mature when we eat the fruit, and that's tomatoes and melons. So when your tomato and your melon plant is ripe, that's when the seed is ripe for harvesting. You're all set to go. However, our summer squash, our green bell peppers, our sweet corns, our green peas, our green beans, our cucumbers, those are all things that we eat when the seed is not yet viable. So you want to leave the fruit on the plant as long as possible, because what you want that seed to be viable. Now, you don't have to keep all of your fruits. You don't have to have you can still eat some of the fruit, and you can save let some of the fruit stay on the plant to ripe so that the seed will ripen. So, take some for yourself, take some to save for seed saving. This is what Michelle was talking about, just not being extractive. There's enough for everybody. The wonderful gift of plants is that they provide a ton of seed, typically. So the third rule of thumb is if you live in Montana, you may be exposed to early frosts. So if you think there's a frost coming and you want to, protect your plant, you can pull the whole plant once the fruit has set and it's in the process of ripening. You can pull the plant, hang it upside down in a warm, airy space to dry, and things will ripen. So, or you can just I'll show you a picture here of some zucchini. Some zucchini that has been harvested for seed. And then you want to clean it according to the wet or dry pulp seed mechanism. So here's an example. This is red peppers. These are ready for harvest. These are green peppers. So green, what we call our bell peppers, green peppers, they are, the seed is unripe. If you want that seed, if you want to save seed from your favorite green pepper, you need to leave some of the fruit on the plant and let it ripen. It will invariably turn red or some version thereof. That's how you know it's ripened. So this little picture on the right shows these are tomatoes that are ripening indoors. These are hot peppers that are ripening on a tray. Here's a little picture of seed stages for beans and peas, right? We eat the green bean at that green stage, but if we want to save it for seed saving, we want it to be crisp and brown shell. So this picture on the left is this is a cocoselle zucchini that I harvested for seed. That's the color. That's not colored. It just kind of turns that yellow color. The husk will get hard. Basically summer squash we eat when the fruit is still unripe, or the seed is unripe, technically. If we left that plant, it would look like this. It basically becomes what we would think of as a winter squash. It comes hard. It's not really all that tasty, but now the seeds are ripe. So these hung out in my house for about a month, and then I scooped out the seeds. They're kind of slimy. I just rinsed them a bunch of times and then let them dry, and they turn this white color, which is on the lower left-hand side. By the way, I'll provide these handouts to Mona, and you guys are welcome to them if this is of service to you. So this is cucumber. This is a Boston cucumber. You can see the size of the cucumber relative to this quart jar. That's about three times the size of the cucumber that you would pick if you were going to pickle it or eat it. You just kind of leave it all there. And this is one of those seed varieties that Adele was talking about that has a little gel sac on it. And so you just want to soak it for a couple days in water. It forms a scum, and that scum basically digests the seed sac, and then you just rinse it and save the seeds. It's super easy, completely uncomplicated to do. So again, I'm going to zip through this because Adele did such a good job, but this is an example of tomatoes that we've squeezed the tomatoes into a little container. They're going to ferment for a couple days, and then you'll just rinse them. Here's a description of the process, but again, Adele did a great job of that. Here's just a picture. These are some yellow Galena cherry tomatoes. This is what it looks like, squeezing it all out. These are just an example of having the seeds drying on pieces of wax paper or parchment paper. You'll notice that I've got the names written on the paper, because otherwise, and you can't see the description, but there is in this picture, the name is written on each one of these jars on the paper towel. So important. What else? Let's see. This is, I think, just another description of the wet and the dry method. So let's move on to greens and roots. So the key here is that when we eat the greens or we eat the root, we never see the plant going to flower. And it's, so if you want to gather seed from your lettuce plant, you have to let it bolt. Or if you want to gather seed from your carrot or your radish or your beet, you got to let it flower. And they're going to get both above ground and below ground is going to get big. So just FYI, for these plants, you want to allocate space and time for these plants to flower and go to seed. A tricky thing for the lettuces is, you know, most lettuces don't like really hot weather. And if we have a hot summer, you're good to go. It'll bolt. Just let it hang out, let it bolt. And then, you know, as Mona was sharing, you'll get this little tuft and flowering. At the flower will tuft, and then you'll get a little seed head, and it's super easy to save the seed from. But if we have cool summers, the lettuce might not bolt. It's like, this is perfect climate for me. And we've had a couple cool summers, at least where I live recently. So you can move it along by planting the plants closer together. They don't like that. They'll tend to bolt faster. Or you could put a row cover of it, or just invite it to think that it's a hotter climate than it is by putting some kind of a cover on it. If you're wanting to gather seed. So that's just a piece of information, things like that. This is a picture here on the lower right of lettuce plant that's gone to seed. You know, that's about 3 feet, maybe even closer to 4 feet, and a couple feet wide, maybe even 3 feet wide. If you've got 6 of these plants, they're going to be big, they're going to be leggy. You might want to tie a twine around it to kind of contain them. You just have to, excuse me, I thought I turned this off. You just have to just know that this is going to happen and give it space, give it time. Radishes, you can get radish seed if you, over the course, if you plant in April or May, you can get seed by the time September comes. But the plant's going to take its time to go to seed. That's its job. So you have to accommodate that time frame on your end. Yeah, let's see. So time and space is the big deal. And here's a picture on the right of a beet plant that's going to ultimately go to seed. This happens to be a cover crop beet, but anyways, needless to say, it gets kind of big. And on the left is this picture of carrots that are in an isolation cage. And, you know, we don't ever see carrots like that because we're just letting them, we're just growing them until we get the root the size that we want. Carrots are actually considered biennials, and so they won't produce their flower until the second year. I think it was Megan who said she's had success with carrots in the ground. Technically, you're supposed to pull them and put them in a cooler storage over winter. But I also have had success with carrots, overwintering carrots in the ground if you can cover the surface of the ground with straw or something that will support the surface of the ground from being exposed to temperature variation so that it's not freezing and thawing with our disruptive climates that we seem to be having lately. And then, you know, there's myriad ways that plants distribute and disperse seed. Poppies are just such an easy thing because, you know, they put a pop up. They'll tell you when they're getting ready to go. That top pops up and they stay upright. You know, no harm or foul there. Mona was talking about her lupins. You know, they just scatter, right? When they're ready to go, they go. So if you've got seeds heads that you think are getting close to ripening, you want to put them in a bag, just as Mona was talking about, because if they scatter, you know, well, now you've got volunteers for next year. This is my favorite harvest tool on the right-hand side. This is Ace paper lawn bags. They're $2 a bag. They're reusable. They're enormous. You can put the whole plant in there. I love them. And then here's just a pretty picture of a milkweed getting ready to fly on the wind. And that this is the monarch butterfly host plant seed that Adele was referring to earlier. Different disruptions, different seed dispersions and seed types. You heard about both marigolds and sunflowers from the board members earlier. And then, you know, how do you access the seeds? My favorite thing to do is get people together and seed dance. This is another way we help remind ourselves about our seed saving capabilities is gathering and sharing the seed harvesting process together. Coming together as a community to harvest and process seed is one of the best ways to awaken our own DNA on how to save seed as community members. So this is guys just dancing on brassica seed pods and shells. These, basically any kind of seed saving materials you'll see here. This is just colanders from a kitchen. Here's a picture frame that somebody took the back out and put some screen on. Here's some folks making screens. Just super easy. There's no right or wrong way to do this. It's just figuring it out. And the more heads that are figuring it out together, the better. This is pictures of a bunch of us doing it indoors. All you need is some plastic on the ground or a strong vacuum cleaner at the end. And we were indoors. We were using a hair dryer. You can use a box fan. The wind is a helpful way to winnow. In Montana, I never seem to get my seeds cleaned before the cold weather comes, so I do a lot of seed cleaning indoors. But there you go. Super easy. More pictures of people enjoying the seed cleaning process. And then viability. I've now turned off my phone, so I don't know what time it is. Very quickly, people ask questions about germ testing and seed viability, so I'll walk us through it. But to be honest, it's important for me to be aware of this for the seed company, because I make a promise to the people who buy our seeds that our seeds have a certain level of germ viability. But to be honest, if I were just saving for my home, some portion of your seed is going to be viable. If you're saving it from open pollinated seed and you're saving mature seed, you're good to go. And if it's as the seed ages, just plant more of it. This does not have to be complicated. That being said, here's some information. Storage, the first thing is you can extend the life of the seed by storing it in a cool, dark, dry place. Seed loses its viability when it's exposed to air, and when it's exposed to light or moisture. So there you go. And then the most important thing is to label. Most seeds viable for at least 3 to 5 years, with the exception really primarily being your onion family members, garlics, parsnips. There you go. And you can either freeze or vacuum seal your seeds to prolong their life. Honestly, I think the most important thing is to keep putting it back into the ground, keep growing it, keep saving it, put it back into production. Here's just an example of labeling, the value of labeling. I label a minimum with the year, where I grew it, and the name. And then if I have some special notes, I'll write them down where I will remember to see them. And the other thing here just is that, again, seeds are incredibly abundant and giving. So this is a quart jar of mustard seed, and this is one harvest from 4 to 6 plants. Up here at the top, summer savory. I have enough summer savory to, plant the universe, I'm pretty sure, or at least our solar system. This is one plant, one harvest. That's a pint of summer savory seeds. And summer savory is a perennial, and it does this every single year. On the bottom right-hand side, these are red poppies. This is probably 15 heads. So, that's 15 blossoms from one plant. I just showed this to show you all that black stuff is the seed. It's over a cup of seeds. Every single one of those seeds is going to produce a plant that produces more than 15 flowers a season. It's so just not, it's an abundance of seeds. Same with chives. Here's a marigold. I don't even know how many marigold plants this is, but it's just maybe a couple plants worth. And then regarding viability, this is Rowan White, who is an extraordinary seed steward and seed saver. And here she is holding an 800-year-old squash with seed that was found in a jar in a community in the southwest of the United States. So check that out. So germination. So there's 2 ways to do it. One is with a paper towel, where you line up your seeds on a moist paper towel and you keep it in a dry, moist, in a dark, moist place for about a week or so in a plastic bag. And, it's basically you're tricking the seed into thinking that it's going to grow. And if it sprouts, then you count how many seeds sprouted, and that's how you can get a percentage that is germinating. Works really well with large seeds, kind of a pain with smaller seeds, and it doesn't really work for light sensitive seeds for obvious reasons. Soil method, which I really like, is I fill a plastic container or some kind of container with my seeds, water them. If I put them in a plastic container that doesn't have holes on it like the ones in this picture, the moisture will stay in there, and I put them in a light location. And again, I trick the seed into thinking that this is a great time to be growing. And then I just count the cotyledons that pop up, and I get a good sense of my germination rate. And that really works well with small seeds, and it can take up a lot of space. So anyways, there's that information. So again, planning next year's garden with seed saving in mind is simply what I said before about keeping track of how big your plant has to get and how long it has to be in the ground in order to make viable seeds. So just keeping that in mind. I think I've said all this before. Moving on, simple seeds to start with. If you're feeling nervous and you don't really know what to do, just as all of these, the board members suggested, is start with plants that you like, and start with easy plants. Your wildflowers are certainly easy. And in terms of vegetables, you probably the thing to do is to start with plants that self-pollinate. I'm not even going to get into cross-pollinating in this talk, but beans, peas, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, lettuces, those generally will grow true to type. You don't have to worry about cross-pollination issues. And certainly you could just even start with just one of those to make a commitment to explore and give yourself permission to make mistakes and learn. Resources, there's a free download from Adaptive Seeds called A Guide to Seed Saving and Seed Stewardship. I'll give Mona that download if you want. It's a great resource. These are my favorite books: Basic Seed Saving, Back to the Garden, Seed Saving, and the Seed Garden. And then here's 2 amazing books on understanding and developing your soil. To this piece that Michelle was talking about, if you're brand new to this, Grow Your Soil is a great beginner's book. If you want to dive more deeply into the biology and chemistry, Nicole Masters' For the Love of Soil is greatest book for your bang for your buck. I think I'm done. Oh, last thing, this is a plug for Free the Seeds, which is something that we do here in our valley for seed saving, but I invite you to do your own version where you are. Basically, this is an effort in our community to get our community to save seeds and help build a seed bank. So that's what I invite you guys to do where you are. And if you have more seeds than you need, then share them with other seed communities and seed banks around the country or the globe. Everybody needs seeds. That's it. I'm going to hop out of here and we can move on to questions. I think, did I get out? Yeah. Oh.
Thank you so much, Robin.
Yeah.
There's so much information there. And I just want to remind everybody that we would like to post this next week on our site. So a lot of those wonderful slides with the information, if you didn't get it all, you'll be able to freeze frame it and read it a little more. But now's our opportunity to ask Robin questions. So Adele can help manage this. And who has a question? You can unmute. And if you'd love to show your video, we'd love to see you. And if anyone has any questions or problems, you can type in the chat. And I would also like to mention the Good Seed Company that Robin has begun here in Montana is fabulous. The seeds are wonderful and very consciously raised. Here I can add my video.
Yeah, So a piece about that, to just jump in here, is, we only sell heirloom varieties, open pollinated varieties that do well where we live, because the whole point of the seed company is to get the seeds out into the community and have communities saving seeds for their own supply. My vision for the company being a success is that we become obsolete. So we don't have all the varieties in the world. We only have varieties that we know reliably do well and that have good homestead permaculture or polyculture properties. So, the squashes store well and they have high nutrition and, they're fairly pest resistant, things like that.
I would like to invite Coulter to ask his question, if you are comfortable and want to, or I can.
Sure. No, yeah. I was just asking on that giant chart, I couldn't zoom in close enough to see if like Baker Creek and or Johnny's selected seeds fall under one of the other giant seed conglomerates.
Oh, no. No, they do not. Most of those companies are the companies that produce the food that, the food that we eat. So the food that we eat, let's say, all the vegetables in your Campbell soup, for example, are grown by farms that are owned by Campbell, and the varieties of the plants that they grow, they actually save the seeds from. All that's part of that supply. But Johnny's is, I think somebody said here, Michelle said it's 100%, Johnny's is 100% employee owned. Fedco, most of the organic smaller seed companies that you think of are not part of that system.
Okay, just wanted to make sure it wasn't one of these deals where they had a beard company and they were just reselling that other product.
Good question.
I was looking at sun-sensitive seeds, but I could only find flower seeds. What vegetables are sun-sensitive seeds?
Very few vegetables. It's mostly herb seeds, or what we call herb seeds, that are sun sensitive.
I just had a practical question about seed saving for like zucchinis or cucumbers. I have a really small garden, so I can only grow maybe 2 zucchini plants, 4 cucumber plants. And I was wondering, if you're going to be growing them for seeds, do you just leave one fruit on a plant and then continue to harvest from that plant the ones that you're going to eat, or what's your technique for that?
Yeah, you the ones you're going to save, you just leave them on there until they ripen. Ideally, for plants that are particularly plants that are self-pollinators, which is not your zucchini or your cucumber, but ideally for those, you'd like to pick fruit from 6 different plants. Or so if you had 4 plants, then I would just make sure you're picking fruit from a couple different plants, because they'll all have slight variations in their genetics, hopefully. Just so that we could follow up on this later, or you could check on YouTube about this. Zucchinis and cucumbers are what they call cross-pollinators. So if you want to save plants, the easiest thing to do, save seeds from those plants, and you want them to grow true to type, you only want one variety in your garden, because they'll cross-pollinate pretty easily. Or there are some tips for hand pollinating the flowers, so that you can ensure that you're controlling the pollination of it. And super easy to do that, and find information on YouTube, or you could call me for more information. But yeah, your squashes are very promiscuous and cross-pollinate at the drop of a hat, which is why you see all those crazy different kinds of gourds, everywhere, that everybody loves. There's, I don't even know how many hundreds of thousands of variations of those. That's because they cross-pollinate pretty readily.
And one more thing, because I just did this year. I was so excited. I had this great big zucchini and it got yellow and it got hard. And I finally decided to cut it open and save the seeds. And they were not seeds. They were all shrivelly and little and wouldn't germinate. And I got the seed from my mom and I failed to ask her if it was an open pollinated variety. So what I think she sent me was a hybrid, and then I agonized all summer long over the first zucchini out, and it was the biggest, and I was so excited because I haven't been able to grow zucchini up here for 20 years. I've tried, and so boy, this was big deal, and it didn't work.
Yeah, so that's the issue with hybrid seed. Yeah. And that's a big thing with saving seed from the food that you eat. Like if you buy a red pepper or tomatoes from the grocery store, if you don't know that that's an open pollinated and heirloom variety, which, you know, depending on the store you're buying it from, most of them are not, that seed's not really viable. So, you know, you need to control it from the start. Thank you, Michelle. That's great.
For biennial plants or brassicas, should we leave those in the ground in here for Montana, or should we take them out and put them somewhere safe for the winter? What's your advice?
So I have only had success with carrots and parsnips hanging out in the ground. I have not had success with beets surviving in the soil in the winter in the ground. I'm just talking about root vegetables right now. I've not had success with cauliflower or broccoli either. The recommended approach for all of them is to take them out in the fall and put them in damp soil or damp sand. Something you could do soil, but sand is also sand will hold the water better. It has to be damp but not wet, and you want to keep it at a steady temperature that's 50 degrees or lower, somewhere in that 50 to 40 degree wet temperature, and it has to be stable and not too humid. So, you know, if you think, and then they'll hang out there. They'll look horrible, but they will hang out there. And you're going to plant this, then you take it out in the spring, and it's going to look yucky, but basically you just don't want it to be gooey, because if it's got any kind of life into it, any kind of strength into it, you just put it back in the ground, that puppy is ready to grow, and it will grow. You can also store them in a walk-in refrigerator that you might find on a farm or in a somebody who has a commercial walk-in cooler, or if you in a root cellar. That's the simple English word I was thinking of. If it's cool enough. Some people try to save them in their refrigerators. It's more complicated to do that because they tend to be more humid, and so the vegetables will tend to rot. But again, there's lots of resources online for Googling and finding out tips, tricks of the trade and tips that people have figured out to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a question about I have a pretty small space that has like a wood fire, so it gets like the temperature fluctuates a lot. Would you recommend saving the seeds in the freezer then, so there isn't the possibility of them getting too hot at some point, or outside, or?
Well, I would just as far away from your stove as possible. You know, you could store them in a box in your closet.
Okay.
You know, it just cool, dark, and dry.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be like refrigerator temperature or
no, or freezer. And if you're going to put them in a cold place like that, you can. I recommend putting them in glass. If you can't put them in glass, then put them in plastic. And in either case, put some kind of a desiccant in there with it. And so I take a little paper bag like this, and I fill it with rice, and I close it up, and I put that in with my seed, and it'll absorb any moisture that's in there.
Okay.
Then if you're going to store it in a cool, in a refrigerated place of some kind, do that only when you know you're not going to be accessing the seed for a long period of time. So, if you're going to put them in there for the fall and you're not going to touch them until the spring, great. And then when you bring them out, bring them out. And what you want to do is let them come back to room temperature before you open them up, because the minute you open them up, it's going to pull in, the air difference is going to pull in the moisture that's in the air. And if you close it back up again, you just trapped all that moisture back in there. So, once it's growing season, just put them on, keep them away from your stove, but just keep them out at ambient temperature. It's okay.
Okay.
Again, these plants, they're strong, they're resilient.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I had a quick question similar to that. Could you store them even though the temperatures kind of swing throughout the winter if you put them in a shaded spot where they're not getting sunlight, and then kind of insulated it to where it would be kind of an average temperature? Say I built a little seed vault out of straw and just put all my seeds in there, but it'd be outside. Would that be better than putting it inside where the temperature is going to vary? Because it's going to be dry outside, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I mean, also think about, are you going to use these next spring? If you're going to use this next spring, we're not worried really about viability. If you're trying to save this for, the apocalypse, then you want to be thoughtful. No, seriously. And I say this because when I first started this, I was like in a panic. I had 1,000 glass jars and I was trying to figure out how to remove the moisture from this room closet I was just going crazy. I was so panicked about this. And then I watched this, some film, I can't even remember the film. And this gentleman is saving rice seed in India, where it's 120 degrees on a cool day. And he's saving bags of rice seed in cement bunkers, where it's like 175 degrees. I'm like, okay, I'm stopping. I'm not worrying about this anymore. So just,
Right.
It's just rule of thumb, just, common sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's like, be nice when you can, but don't get psychotic.
There you go. Right. Not worth stressing.
So I have a quick question, Robin. I love squash and I love so many different kinds of squash, and I'm tempted to grow all of them. Is there a rule of thumb just generally placing them at a distance since we have a larger property, or are they going to cross-pollinate no matter what?
They're insect pollinated. So, yeah. So the story about squash, and I have learned that they're pollinated by native bees, and the native bees, they don't live in a hive like honeybees do.
Mhm.
And they'll actually sleep in the flowers. So they're ready to pollinate before you wake up. So,
Okay.
so what you do, I'll just tell you, is you get a Q-tip and you get some masking tape with color, and then you get a stake so that you can find that flower later. You look, so the thing about squash is that there are male and female flowers on the same plant. I used to have a slide of this, I don't have it here. The female flowers will have a little bulb at the bottom of the flower, and that's going to be your squash if the flower gets pollinated. But that's how you tell the male and the female. And so you want to open a flower. So you're basically taking a flower, you want to let the flower get as big as it can before it opens. And you are opening the flower. You're cracking the nut here. And you're going to do this on a male flower. You're going to take your Q-tip and you're going to swipe the pistils and get the pollen from the male flower. And then you're going to go to a female flower that's still closed. You're going to crack it open and you're going to paste the pollen onto the pistil, onto the stamen of the female flower, the receptive surface. It's kind of sticky and you just kind of paint it on. And then you're going to use that masking tape I told you about, or the paint tape, the blue tape, and tape that flower close again.
Okay.
so that an insect doesn't want to get in there. And as long as they've got other plants to get into, they're not going to spend their time trying to get into this closed flower. And that flower is now pollinated, and it will now germinate, and that little ball at the bottom of the flower will become your squash. The tricky part is that while all this is happening, that plant's getting bigger, and all the leaves are getting bigger. And if you think you're going to remember where that plant is without some support, bless you, I've never found my flower. So I use a stake and with a little flag on it, anything to like, oh yeah, there's my flower that I've taped. And you'll want to do this on different plants if you can, so you can collect fruit from different plants, so that you're supporting the cross-pollination and the variability of your seed in your seeds, and then you'll be good to go.
I think I'll put a ribbon or a band around it because squash moves. I mean, it just grows and spreads. And
Yes.
But yeah, thank you, because that's a great way to be sure you're going to get, what you planted next year. Thank you.
And if more than you are in your garden, you'd like to make sure that everybody on your team knows that fruit is not to be picked, because that also can happen.
Right. Thank you. Okay. Well, we've gone really quite a long time right now. If there's one more question, we'll take it. Otherwise, I think we're done. So do we see another question? Anybody? No? Megan says no. Okay, we're finished, and thank you so much, Robin. And I want to thank the board members too, because it's just so beautiful to get excited about the spring and seed saving and see what we're all going to be creating in the future years. So thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, have a great season, everyone.
Oh, and I have to add one thing. We hope to have Robin here personally, along with Patty Armbrister, and that would be the last Saturday in February. And we are looking for an event venue, something that will house, well, people with a lot of space around them. And we would like to exchange seeds at that event. So watch for that. And if things change and we need to do another Zoom, we might do a part 2. But anyway, thank you all for joining us, and more to continue. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, Robin. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.